In the modern gaming space, cheating can take any number of forms. Whilst the classic cheat code might be a rarer sight, the onset of mods and hacks are a fresh new way to see and find things that developers tucked away, whether they anticipated players would find them or not. Unlockable characters, secret abilities, hidden modes, and mind-blowing Easter eggs, there really is no end to secrets in gaming, and we're all the better for it. This list celebrates just a few video game cheats, from the retro to the modern day, and some of the best and wildest secrets that can only be found if players are willing to get their hands dirty. Cheaters may or may not win, but at least they have a story to tell. I'm Cy for WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 insane video game secrets you had to cheat to unlock. Number 10. The Secret SUV. Battlefield 3. We've all seen the out of bounds return to map sorts of messages in games. Gone are the days of invisible walls trying to keep players on the right path. If we try to leave a map these days, developers will just set up a kill zone to stop us. By activating a hack that bypasses the standard countdown warning, Battlefield 3 players are able to really explore what's out beyond a stage's boundaries. Most of the time there isn't much to write home about, except on the mission Kafarov. Outside of the expected area, there is, for whatever reason, a huge map to explore. Sure, there's not a lot here, or so it seems at first, but it's truly interesting to see how much additional space was rendered and constructed, complete with foliage and, after several minutes of sprinting, a road by the ocean. Tucked away beyond this little walk through nature lies an interactable SUV. What is it doing here? Whilst the SUV appears throughout the campaign, why is this the only example of this vehicle being drivable in all of Battlefield 3? The answers to these questions we can only guess, but at least it gives us an opportunity for a leisurely drive by the coast. Nice. Number 9. DOOMGUY, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3. Whilst the first Tony Hawk's Pro Skater was a little light on unlockable characters, the novelty skaters became a core part of the franchise when the sequel put Spider-Man on a skateboard and ripped the lid of possibility off from there. Since then, the likes of Darth Maul, Shrek, and a gigantic dismembered hand have joined the long and ludicrous list of playable characters. In Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3, there are a few excellent additions like Wolverine and Iron Man that could be unlocked by fulfilling certain goals. However, the surprising addition of DOOMGUY was a hotly debated topic, as it seemed that nothing you achieved would add him to the selection screen. Nothing except the code IDKFA typed into the cheat menu of the PC version, which unlocks the Doom protagonist to play, plus a bonus video of Gearbox Studio proving that they're better at developing skateboarding games than actually doing it themselves. Whilst the series has had plenty of wild and wacky referential characters, DOOMGUY is one of the very few video game stars who have crossed over, so he stands out in more than one way. Best of all, 19 years later, Doom Eternal included a easy-to-miss skateboard Easter egg as a nod to that time that the Doomslayer was ripping and tearing on the halfpipe. Number 8. Unlockable TIMESPLITTERS 2, HOMEFRONT: The Revolution. 2016 FPS HOMEFRONT: The Revolution will likely either be remembered as a pretty middling affair in its own right, or rather strangely as the most up-to-date way to play a much older all-time classic. When you reach the restricted zone, the game will take you to the ramshackle safe house, The Bourse. On the second floor is a dusty old arcade machine that, when examined, will pause the revolution and let the player get some nostalgic kicks playing through 2 stages of 2002 FPS legend TIMESPLITTERS 2. It took 5 years before the truth behind this Easter egg came out though, when developer Matt Phillips admitted in 2021 that there was more to this TIMESPLITTERS port. A lot more, like the rest of the game kind of more. However, it was all locked behind a cheat code that he had unfortunately completely forgotten due to how complex it was. Originally he'd given the cheat to a friend to leak onto a Discord server, but in a hilarious twist of fate, said friend had been banned for dealing out phony info. However, in the wake of the news, that friend, who turned out to be Xbox software engineer Stephen Peralt, re-emerged with the code after all this time. Considering the lack of official re-releases for TIMESPLITTERS 2, this may well be one of the best unlockable surprises for long-time fans of the genre. Number 7. The Mind of a Madman, The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. Whilst the phrase cheat codes likely brings up the image of inputting strings of button inputs on your home console controller of choice, PC games had their own realm when it came to computer commands. Many great PC versions of games still use this today, including Bethesda RPGs like Skyrim. The game's list is a pretty exhausted repertoire of developer commands that can range from changing your character's stats and adding items to your inventory to classics like God Mode. A particular highlight is the simple kill all code that knocks down every non-important NPC and creature within a certain radius in a way that feels almost distressingly powerful. A personal favourite though is the no collision code, which does exactly what it says on the tin. Not only does this make traversal a breeze, it might lead players to an unfinished area. There's a door lurking out of bounds labelled as the Mind of a Madman. Within it, players find themselves in what appears to be an empty house, but as they walk away it seems to be a model on a table. Beyond that is an unfinished cave system. Thought to be once associated with the quest The Mind of Madness, players won't be able to access their inventory or map whilst here, but they can at least enjoy the half-finished view. Number 6. Insulting voice announcer. Wave Race Blue Storm. It's always a fun time when a video game cheat code goes unfound for years because it really makes you wonder how such a thing happens. Nevertheless, players had a whole new way to enjoy Wave Race Blue Storm in 2010, a full 9 years after the game released, and that way is to be repeatedly chastised and mocked by the game's announcer rather than be cheered along. Blue Storm's alternative commentator would make for a hell of a prank if you were playing with a friend who didn't know about it, since he does all the trash talking for you. Yes, the typically upbeat announcer for the game can be switched out by a secret code for a much more bored and altogether dissatisfied take. Gone is the Californian surfer dude stereotype who thinks everything is sweet, and instead players get to listen to the sardonic grumblings of an announcer who, from the off, tells you you've chosen poorly no matter which character you play as. A total barrage of poor, pathetic, and a hilarious coup of "ooh, a turbo" will guide you through every track no matter how well you're doing. It's not surprising that this wasn't made unlockable through normal means considering how maddening it is, but it's that kind of weird that you can't deny wanting to try out at least once. Number 5. I Squish You, Saints Row 4. Whilst Grand Theft Auto may be a series that comes to mind when one thinks of cheat codes, for all of the chaos of GTA, Saints Row always knew how to turn that up to 1000. You add cheat codes into that mix and you've got some gleeful carnage on your hands. The 4th entry in the franchise includes some all-time great alterations to the game, including infinite sprint, indestructible vehicles, and the classic to end all gaming cheat classics, Big Head mode. It also has some simply wild stuff like pedestrians that explode when you kill them, or in fact are raptured off into the sky in hilariously bizarre fashion. Alternatively, if you've got a fear or score to settle with mascot costumes, you can put every pedestrian in gigantic ape, teddy bear and hot dog outfits before you run them down. Perhaps the most wonderfully unhinged of all is I Squish You, which basically gives every vehicle in the game the mass of a tank. This means you can not only force drivers off the road in an instant, but simply plough over those Sunday drivers going far too slow, crushing them under wheel. Considering the abject mayhem of Saints Row 4, there is something concerningly calming about the chaos you can cause with this one. Number 4. AKUMA, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. There are a few video game genres where unlockable characters are more of an important staple than in fighting games. Whether it's overcoming opponents set to the hardest difficulty or completing certain challenges, games of this type often have creative ways to hide tantalizing special characters. However, developers rarely make fighters that aren't meant to be seen, and so whilst these obstacles may be tough, they come with the greatest rewards. One particular Street Fighter cast member, however, couldn't be unlocked no matter how great you were at the game. One of the many playground rumours during the mid-90s, AKUMA's first appearance in Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo was the subject of much hearsay. In fact, he only exists at all as a nod to an April Fool's joke regarding a hidden character in the original Street Fighter 2. Capcom decided to have some fun with this by putting a character behind a strange series of button inputs. In order to get their hands on the demonic martial artist, players require a certain amount of timing when moving around the character select screen, hovering over particular fighters, and then mashing down all 3 punch buttons at once. There's no alternative way to unlock AKUMA, so you'd better get good at this if you want to play as him each time you boot up the game. Number 3. Hidden Staff Photo, Witcher 3. Whilst not an unlockable per se, this little Easter egg is the perfect way to cap off the Witcher 3 experience, not just for players but for the staff as well. The Blood and Wine DLC, the final piece of post-launch content that the beloved open-world RPG received, heavily features the mountainous region of Toussaint. Up nearest to the tallest peak of the area's mountains lies a secret that can only be accessed by PC players with a willingness to take on board some mods. Boundary-breaking Geralt off the map and taking him up the mountain, players can find amongst the grass a couple of pillars with an easel between them. Activating Witcher Vision fills in the blank canvas with a photo of the CD Projekt Red staff celebrating the end of the game's long and treasured journey. There's plenty of great secrets tucked away in Witcher 3 for players to find, such as ghost ships and references to Game of Thrones. This detail wasn't necessarily snuck in for the player's sake, more so for those who worked on the game. There's something altogether wholesome about the smiling faces looking back at you. By including the staff photo, CD Projekt Red commemorate their years together as a team. Lovely. Number 2. Big Daddy, Age of Empires. The most precious of cheat codes in real-time strategy games tend to be of a more bombastic sort. Sure, you could give yourself tons of resources or unlock your entire technology tree, but why not go the extra mile and spawn in a bunch of stuff that simply shouldn't be there? Age of Empires as a series gained a reputation for so-called cheat units that could be used only by inserting certain codes into the game and were basically designed for the pure mayhem of it all. They became a staple of the franchise and included a spaceman and a crown-wearing alpaca, yes really, Daddy, but few things will ever be as memorable as Big Daddy. Getting tired gearing up your Greeks to take on the Sumerians? Simply type the code in and spawn what appears to be a Camaro with a giant gun on its roof. The Winzit Z, as it's known, is the fastest unit in the game for obvious reasons that include horsepower and petroleum, and its Gorse cannon attack is more than strong enough to take out any infantry in the game. Poet John Lilly once said that all is fair in love and war. We expect that the Egyptians in Age of Empires being bombarded by future technology feel differently. Number 1. Dismemberment. Star Wars Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast. You might not necessarily think about it, but dismemberment is a prevailing theme throughout the Star Wars franchise. The first 6 numbered films all feature some kind of limb lopping, leaving characters without arms or legs, or in Darth Maul's case, half of his entire body. Star Wars Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast is a first and third person action game that is often called one of the best video game spin-offs for the franchise. Despite being a game so Star Wars that it has the word Jedi in the title twice, this 2002 PC title doesn't feature this apparent classic trope of the films. Unless of course you visited a hive of scum and villainy and come back with the cheat code Help Us Obi-Wan to open the game's debug menu and then dropped in G-Saber Realistic Combat 1 so that you might turn to the more violent side of the Force. Suddenly that sword made of concentrated light in your hand now has the power to dismember and decapitate to your heart's content. There's no expense spared either, with the game's great ragdoll effects really adding to the brutal crumple of enemies who can lose their arms, legs, head, or be cut straight in half. It's no wonder that this kind of power was locked behind a secret code. And that's the list. Let us know what you thought of this video in the comments below, as well as other video game secrets that you love, but you have to cheat to get them. There's plenty out there. Make sure you like this video, share it with your friends, subscribe and hit that notification bell. I've been Cy for WhatCulture, and have a good week.